Have you ever declined an invitation to a party? Not because you were busy, not because you had work to finish, but simply because you wanted to stay home and be alone? Maybe you pictured the noise, the small talk, the crowded room, and suddenly the quiet comfort of your own space felt far more appealing. So you politely said, "Maybe next time." But right after that decision, something strange happened. A small voice in your mind whispered, "Is that weird? Am I becoming antisocial? Do people think I'm boring?" In a culture that constantly celebrates extroversion, choosing solitude can feel like breaking an unwritten rule. From an early age, many of us are taught that happiness lives in busy rooms, that successful people are always networking, and that a good weekend is measured by how many plans you have. So when you choose a quiet evening instead of another social event, it can feel like you're doing something wrong. But what if that feeling of guilt isn't coming from your psychology at all? What if it's simply the pressure of expectations that were never designed for everyone? One of the biggest misunderstandings about people who enjoy being alone comes from a simple but powerful confusion: the difference between loneliness and solitude. At first glance, they may look the same. In both situations, a person is physically alone, but psychologically, they are completely different experiences. Loneliness is a painful emotional state. It is the hollow feeling that appears when our need for meaningful connection goes unmet. A person can feel lonely in many situations, while sitting alone in an apartment, while scrolling through social media, or even while standing in the middle of a crowded party. Loneliness is not about physical isolation. It is about emotional disconnection. It feels like something important is missing. Solitude, on the other hand, is not a condition of deprivation. It is a choice. Solitude is the experience of being alone without feeling lonely. It is intentional and often deeply restorative. People who seek solitude are not escaping the world because they dislike people. Instead, they are stepping away from the noise in order to recharge, think clearly, and reconnect with their inner world. Psychological research has shown that periods of healthy solitude can actually improve emotional regulation, creativity, and self-awareness. When the constant input from conversations, notifications, and social expectations fades into the background, the mind finally has space to process thoughts and emotions more deeply. In today's hyper-connected world, where our attention is constantly pulled toward messages, feeds, and notifications, true solitude has become surprisingly rare. And that is precisely why it has become so valuable. Because solitude is not about shutting people out. It's about finally giving yourself the quiet space to be present with your own mind. To understand why some people genuinely enjoy being alone, we need to look a little deeper into the brain itself. Much of the difference comes down to how our brains respond to stimulation, particularly through a chemical called dopamine, often known as the brain's reward neurotransmitter. For people with more extroverted tendencies, social environments, like lively gatherings, meeting new people, or fast-paced conversations, activate the brain's dopamine reward system. These experiences create a surge of excitement and motivation. In simple terms, the more stimulation they receive, the more energized they tend to feel. But for those who lean toward introversion, the same environments can feel very different. Introverted brains tend to be more sensitive to stimulation. What feels exciting to an extrovert may quickly feel overwhelming to an introvert. A crowded party, constant chatter, or a noisy room can push their nervous system past its optimal level of stimulation, leaving them mentally drained rather than energized. Instead, many people who prefer solitude rely more heavily on another neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. While dopamine rewards novelty and external stimulation, acetylcholine is associated with calm focus and internal attention. It becomes active when we engage in quiet, mentally absorbing activities, reading a book, reflecting on ideas, writing, or concentrating deeply on a single task. This is why a quiet evening alone, perhaps with a cup of tea and a good book, can feel deeply satisfying to someone with an introverted brain. They are not withdrawing from life. Their brain is simply restoring its energy in a different and perfectly natural way. Now that we understand the brain chemistry behind solitude, a more interesting question emerges. What kind of psychological traits tend to develop in people who genuinely enjoy spending time alone? Psychologists have noticed that individuals who are comfortable with solitude often share several powerful psychological strengths. The first is deep self-awareness. When you spend time alone, there are fewer distractions to hide behind. There is no constant conversation, no background noise of other people's opinions. Instead, you are left with your own thoughts. Over time, this creates a powerful habit of reflection. People who regularly spend time in solitude often develop a clearer understanding of their emotions, their motivations, and their personal values. They know what energizes them, what drains them, and what truly matters to them. The second strength is strong personal boundaries. Because these individuals are comfortable being alone, they are less likely to tolerate relationships that disrupt their peace. Many people stay in unhealthy friendships or relationships simply because they fear being alone. But people who enjoy solitude do not feel that same pressure. Their standard becomes simple. If someone's presence brings more stress than peace, they are willing to step away. The third trait is independent thinking. Human beings are deeply influenced by social pressure. In groups, people often adjust their opinions to fit the majority, sometimes without even realizing it. But solitude creates space for independent thought. When someone regularly steps away from the noise of group influence, they gain time to analyze ideas, question assumptions, and form their own conclusions. And finally, people who enjoy solitude often build fewer but deeper relationships. They may not maintain a large social circle, but the connections they do have tend to be genuine and meaningful. Instead of dozens of casual acquaintances, they prefer a small number of trusted relationships built on honesty, loyalty, and mutual understanding. In many ways, solitude quietly strengthens the inner foundation of a person's life. It nurtures clarity, independence, and emotional stability, qualities that are often invisible on the surface but incredibly powerful beneath it. To truly understand the value of solitude today, we have to look at the world we live in. Modern life is louder than it has ever been. Our attention is constantly pulled in dozens of directions. Notifications lighting up our phones, social media feeds updating every few seconds, endless messages, headlines, videos, and opinions competing for space in our minds. We live in what psychologists often call an attention economy, where every platform is designed to capture and hold our focus for as long as possible. But the human brain was never built for this level of constant stimulation. When the mind is exposed to non-stop input, it rarely gets the chance to slow down, process emotions, or organize thoughts. Over time, this mental overload can lead to fatigue, anxiety, and a sense of inner chaos. This is where solitude becomes incredibly powerful. When someone steps away from the noise, even for a short time, the brain finally enters a different mode. Stress levels begin to drop, attention resets, and deeper thinking becomes possible again. Solitude creates the mental space where creativity, insight, and emotional clarity can emerge. People who are comfortable being alone often develop a natural advantage in this kind of environment. While others may feel restless in silence, they are able to use that quiet space as a tool. It becomes a place to think more clearly, recharge mentally, and reconnect with their own priorities. In a world that constantly demands your attention, the ability to step back and be alone is no longer just a personality trait. It may be one of the most valuable psychological skills a person can have today. There is a fascinating psychological paradox about people who enjoy being alone. The very people who are most comfortable with solitude often end up having healthier and more meaningful relationships. Why? Because they are not connecting with others out of fear, loneliness, or emotional dependency. They don't need someone to fill an empty space inside them. Instead, their relationships come from choice, not necessity. When someone who values solitude chooses to spend time with you, it means something. It means your presence genuinely adds to their peace, rather than simply distracting them from silence. And that kind of connection tends to be deeper, calmer, and far more authentic. So if you are someone who enjoys your own company, don't see it as a flaw. It might actually be one of your greatest psychological strengths. If this video resonated with you, consider subscribing for more psychology insights and share in the comments. Do you recharge best alone or around people?